Well, hello everyone. Welcome to World at War Comics. My next special guest is, correct me if I'm wrong, is it a four-time Harvey winner, three-time Eisner winner, writer of Fantastic Four, and a whole bunch of other stuff that we could get into, Ryan. But I think so far you've done pretty good, my friend.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Did I get that right? Is it three Eisners and four Harveys? Plus a bunch of others.
Uh, See, I tried to dodge that question because I'm not 100% sure what the answer is, and that's such a jerk thing to say. I think
Yeah,
that is right.
yeah. Look, Wikipedia never lies, Ryan. And so
Perfect. Yes.
the internet
Except
never.
for on the chickens article.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty darn impressive, to be quite honest. So, congratulations on all your success up to this point. But what I would love to do, Ryan, just so we could get to know you a little bit better, I would love to understand the motivation around storytelling. What time in your life did that kind of passion for storytelling take place? And was there a particular person, maybe a teacher, a family member that really helped kind of drive you in that direction and kind of create that passion for you?
These are good questions. When you said, was there a person or a teacher, the first person who came to mind was my grade 13, which we had in Ontario at the time, my grade 13 English teacher. I had another grades too. Her name was Miss Jan Cover. And I remember her passing back an assignment. We had been studying Stephen Leacock, who's a Canadian comedian, writes great stories, short stories generally. And we'd written something. She was like, Ryan, you could do something like this. Like you could write comedy if you wanted to. And at that point in my life, I was all in on computers. I'm like, no, I'm going to be a computer science guy, but appreciate the vote of confidence. But it was the first time I'd ever really seriously considered that sort of thing. And then I went to school. And in my last year of undergrad, I started my webcomic Dinosaur Comics, and I kept that up through grad school. And then when I graduated, I had the choice between getting a job or doing the comic. And so to become a full-time web cartoonist, just had to not get a job, which was really easy. I didn't apply anywhere and I slid right into it. Um, so it was a slow process of sort of adjusting what I thought things were going to look like. But in terms of storytelling, I can tell you in that last year of grade 13, I was really struggling between two programs I wanted to apply to. Carleton University, the local university, was really good for computer science and really good for humanities. And I was like, I remember a conversation with my parents being like, what should I do? Should I do humanities? Should I do computer science? Because I really enjoy writing, but I also really enjoy computers. And my dad, very pragmatic, was like, well, you can study computers and write in your spare time. I'm not sure you can write and program computers in your spare time. That seems like a more heavy time sink. And also I guess she was my girlfriend, but an ex at that time was going to the nannies program. And my parents were like, "You're just doing this because you're lovesick." Like, no, I actually do like writing. Like, I swear it's real. I'm not following a girl there. Um, so it was a slow process. I'm not the kind of person who can tell you like I knew from age 6 I wanted to be a writer, but I can tell you that in that time in high school in undergrad, I was always getting the itch to like maybe I'll write something, a little comedy article, or I had a web page that explained why how did the chicken cross the road was funny in a really necessary, overly detailed way, which I thought was funny. So it's always been there, but it hasn't really been like this is what I want to do until I looked around and that's what I was doing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's worked out so far for you the
Yeah,
right
pretty good so far.
pretty good so far. I'm curious from a computer programming standpoint and from a storytelling standpoint, is there anything that you could take from computer programming that really helps you become a better storyteller, like processes or the way that you go about telling your story?
Yeah, people often think, maybe they don't anymore, but when I was entering that field, there was this idea that they were diametrically opposed, that computer programming was logic and rationality and thinking, and creative writing is staring off into space and doing your little make em ups. But the truth is, they're both creative acts. When you're working in a computer language, you have restrictions on what you can do and what's valid. And there's also clever ways to get around that. Or you're the same, it exercises the same muscles as when I have a story problem and when I have a programming problem or a database problem or a load problem. It's a puzzle with an answer that you can find. And in computer science, when you find the answer, your program works or works better, or the load goes in, whatever you're trying to achieve. And in writing, you can then write that story and reread it and realize, oh man, this is working. This is making me feel the way I want to. So they're very adjacent. I think they're both creative things.
Yeah, I would think so because with like the Fantastic Four and the amazing history, the first family, I mean, there's so much that goes with the Fantastic Four that you have all
Yeah.
the continuity in history. So I'm thinking like a program, right? There's limits to what you could do because it's very black and white. Continuity kind of works that way because, right, you can't cause a character to do something maybe that's never done before, but there is ways around that, I would think, in storytelling as well. I don't know if that made sense to you, how I
No, it is. It's interesting too because it's fuzzy. Like continuity, I think about a lot because it's such an interesting beast that's almost unique to superhero comics North America, where in theory everything counts. In practice, the best stories that we all like count, and the stories we all forgot about don't count. And so you can always go digging in continuity and bring something back. You're not breaking any rules, but it's such a fuzzy thing, and also it can really put restraints on what story you're telling. With Squirrel Girl, I had an issue where I wanted her to go and hang out with Doctor Strange, Sorcerer Supreme. And I was told, oh well, he's actually Loki is Sorcerer Supreme right now. And I was like, oh, that's so much better. I'll have her hang out with Loki. Like this is great. But I can't think of another mode of storytelling where imaginary people, someone else's imaginary story about this imaginary people, will absolutely kill the story you're trying to tell. I want to do a Thanos story with Squirrel. I couldn't because he was dead at the time.
yeah.
He's never been alive, but he was dead at the time in the comic, so I couldn't tell that story.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's really interesting. But it's funny you mentioned like they can't do that before because there's an issue recently with Fantastic Four where I had Sue and Johnny combine their powers in a way they hadn't done before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on one hand, I was thinking, well, who am I to waltz in after 60 years of storytelling, following the footsteps of Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, all these other great writers, and be like, you know what, they can do this now. You never thought of it. I'm doing it. This is new and it's valid. But on the other hand, I felt like this was a reasonable way for these two people to use their powers together. And it felt like a natural evolution of what had come before. So as long as it makes sense for the characters, I think you can make it work, which
Yeah.
is, it's such a fuzzy thing, continuity. It's such an odd beast.
Yeah. Fans will let you know, Ryan, when you
They
do.
do. They do. And they've been great. Like it's been really gratifying to see responses to things
Yeah.
online. Sometimes I see it randomly. Sometimes people send it to me. A couple times they email me, which is rare. Those emails have all been generally good, I think, which is nice. I had one person email me asking if my comics were canon, and I was like, there feels like a really strong implied criticism in
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
question.
It's almost like, God, I hope this isn't canon. I hope this is Elseworld.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I did a writing job once, and I sent in my script, and they were like, did you accidentally send in an earlier draft? And I was like, oh no, you hate this. Like, the best thing the story you're telling yourself is maybe he sent in the wrong file. We are in trouble. Like, this is not working out.
Oh, that's so funny, man. Well, I mean, 20 issues in, I have to ask, because of your computer programming education, there was a
Mhm.
portion, I think, in issue maybe 13, 14, 15 with MetaMind. Were you
Yes.
able to kind of utilize a little bit of your computer programming as far as the science behind MetaMind and how that functioned amongst that area where Baxter was?
Well, it's interesting because the MetaMind thing came from actually philosophy. There's a thought experiment in the 50s that I opened that story with of
Yeah.
these philosophers saying, "Oh, imagine it was called the China brain because imagine all the people in China, which in 50s America was just this imagined populous place, and all of them have walkie-talkies that let them speak in such a way that it duplicates the functioning of how a neuron works.
Mhm.
And you had enough people in China to have say number of neurons in a brain, would that produce something that is sentient? And the purpose of that thought experiment is, well, let's argue about it and try to get the core of can you run a human mind on different hardware, even though that's not the terms they're putting it in. And it felt to me that was very close to something we could do in the science fantasy of Fantastic Four and make it actually software instead of just walkie-talkies. And the fun with that story was Metamind starts out as an antagonist and then becomes an ally and then becomes this really sympathetic um, mind that dies. And you're there with it as it dies. And it was fun to sort of bring the reader on that journey because I think everyone's primed for the AI to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
And it was initially, but then it progressed past that, which I thought was very sympathetic, very human.
Yeah, I mean, the response of Reed, I think, was the response of the reader too, because at the very end, it seemed like Metamind did help. Whereas at the very beginning, it certainly did not seem like it was in the mood to help out in any kind
Mm-hmm.
of way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so cool, man. So, 20 issues. I don't know what your goal was as far as how many issues. Did you expect to get to 20 issues? Because these days, man, most writers come in and it's usually 6 issues, maybe 12, and then they're moving on to the next thing. As a
Mm-hmm.
fan, um, which I know is completely different than maybe where a writer's mindset is. I kind of like to have a writer on a book a little bit longer term, like 30, 40 issues, because then I think you're able to really get a grasp of the characters and really develop some really cool arcs within that longer time frame. So it's refreshing that you've been on it for 20, but did you expect to be on it as long as you have?
Yeah. So honestly, I didn't expect it to last the year at all because I thought this is a very different take on Fantastic Four. We're doing these short standalone stories. We're doing this sort of what I thought was cool and interesting, but I don't know what everyone else is going to think. And so you hope for the best, but you'd have no expectations. And the way it works is you stay on the book for as long as the book is selling, for as long as the editorial likes you there, for as long as they don't think they could sell more copies with someone else writing it, and for as long as you want to do it. As long as all those four things are aligned, you can continue. So it's always up in the air. But it's really gratifying to get to do something for that long for exactly the reasons you say. Like as a reader, you get to dig into the characters more. You get to have real connection to them, and there's pluses and minuses as a writer. I know that some people think you don't want to stay on a book for too long. You get pigeonholed; they'll forget about you. But I spent 5 years writing Squirrel Girl because I loved writing Squirrel Girl, and when that ended, I can now spend a couple years writing a different book. Like it's like you, I feel like there's value in being able to really make a connection with the character, tell a story over a longer term because you get to see them evolve in the way you can't really see a character change that much over 6 issues over half a year. But when you've read the book for 5 years, like in the letter pages of Squirrel Girl, we had people who started reading the book shortly after they started reading at like age 4 and 5, little boys and girls. And then last issue sending in photos themselves, they're now 5 years older, like they're in school. And
Right.
yeah, that's such a privilege to be with someone in their mind like that when they're growing up. And it really underlines to me the value of spending time with a set of characters for it to really make them feel like home.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, when you got into comic books the first time, what were your expectations of working within the industry? And was there things that you were really surprised about of how the industry operates?
Yeah, I hadn't realized that there was no central planner for everything.
Mm.
So I thought, oh, if I'm going to do this, I'll need to make sure that everyone knows, for these 3 issues, Squirrel Girl is going to be in the moon. But you don't need to do that. If anyone needs to use a character, they'll just ask that office. So, like I said, with the Doctor Strange example, I asked my editor to use Doctor Strange. He went to the Doctor Strange office, and they said, oh no, he's Loki right now. We had a fun example with that in Squirrel Girl. I wanted to use, want to have Squirrel Girl fight the Avengers. I wanted her to beat up Captain America, and they asked the Captain America Avengers office, and the note came back that when this book comes out, Captain America will have had the super soldier serum sucked out of him, so he'll just be an old man with no powers. And I was like, well, having Squirrel Girl beat up an old man with no powers feels that might not read too well on the page, so let's not do that. And then my editor's editor, Tom Brevoort, hopped on the chain. He was like, well, actually, Steve Rogers is a trained military man in peak physical condition. Even at age 80, he's really great. I was like, so fine, she'll beat him up. And she did.
That's
The
awesome.
only thing we changed was the cover of that issue. This great shot Eric Henderson did.
Yeah.
of all the Avengers coming down and Squirrel Girl at the bottom with her fists up. And her initial version of that had her like this, but with old man Steve Rogers knocked out behind her. And it really looked like she had just murdered an old man, a senior citizen. So we just cropped him out, and the cover worked like gangbusters.
Yeah, yeah, that might not have been real good for a Squirrel Girl
Yeah.
cover. So, was Squirrel Girl under Tom Brevoort's leadership at the time with the Avengers?
He was executive editor on it. Was Will Moss was my editor, working for Tom, working for Avengers Office. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Tom Brevoort is the walking Marvel encyclopedia. He could
He
tell
knows everything.
anything and everything. I had him on the podcast and he started talking about Fantastic Four. And if you watch it, he goes from issue 1 through 40 to tell me everything that happened in every single issue. And I was just listening. He goes, "Do you want me to keep going?" I'm like, "Tom, if you want to keep going, go ahead." But I think 40 issues is pretty good, man.
He's a tremendous resource and a public resource too. I was looking at his personal blog today, just today, because I wanted to remind myself he has an analysis of Fantastic Four #1.
Yeah.
And he goes through and he's like, here are what I think, what I believe that I can't prove because the original art's been lost, but here's what I think the changes were made when the Fantastic Four went from this document that no longer exists, which he believes are 2 issues, and they were collapsed into 1 to make that Fantastic Four #1. And like reconstructing panels that have never been seen. But he's like, well, Jack Kirby liked a triptych. So I bet you this was 3 panels we only saw 2. And here's what the first one would look like. Just like the level of scholarship you get with, biblical scholars who can reconstruct documents from references in later documents that still come down to us. You see in Tom Brevoort, who has such a tremendous knowledge of Marvel and Fantastic Four, especially, which is great for as the guy writing Fantastic Four. When I send him a script and he says this does what we needed to, I'm like, okay, phew, I haven't screwed up catastrophically because Tom Brevoort would let me know if I screwed up catastrophically.
That's so cool, man. And what an honor to get to work with someone like that too. I think Ryan is pretty cool. Now he's on X-Men, so I don't know if you still work with him at all, right?
Yeah, he's still in Fantastic Four. He brought that with him.
Oh, did he? Okay, very
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
I'm sure he's going to take that wherever he goes. He's a huge Fantastic Four fan.
yeah.
That's so cool. Now, Ryan, as far as writing Fantastic Four, how far along are you from a script standpoint? And what is that comfort level for you when you're writing out your story?
Yeah, so when we started, I had a great 6-month lead. Just terrific. I was the only worry was, issue 1 comes out, and I was thinking, I hope everyone likes it because there's no course corrections for half a year. Like we're continuing the same. We have double shipped 2, maybe 3 times since then, so 2 issues in a month, which cuts into my lead. So right now I am at the skin of my teeth. The issue gets sent in, and it needs to be sent in at the end of the month, which is not ideal. I like to catch up, but there is some other stuff that is not yet announced
Oh, that's
that is taking up some of the time, so I can't quite get 2 Fantastic Fours written in a month.
yeah.
But it's fun. It's fun to think of a story and then write that story, and then a month later someone has drawn it, and at the same time I get to send Alex Ross suggestions for what maybe the cover could be, and then while that's happening, most recently Carlos Gomez is sending me these amazing pages he's penciled out in my email, and it feels like a magic trick to have thought of the story, broken it down to panels, written the dialogue, and then it exists as an actual comic within the space of a couple months.
Yeah.
It's never. I mean, I always say like the best part of being a comics writer is when you get those pencils in and you're seeing a page that is better than you imagined when you imagined it and wrote it down. And now it's been punched up by a visual artist, a visual thinker who's taken the raw material you gave them and turned it into something that is better than what you could have done on your own in 1,000 years. One of the great joys of a collaborative medium is your collaborators and how much they can elevate what you've done.
And from that standpoint, that collaboration that you have with the artist, can you kind of walk us through what that looks like? Is there a lot of back and forth? Do you have Zoom calls, or now on issue 20, you're just sending the script, artist sends the panels, and you're just on this like rhythm?
Yeah, it's much more like the latter now. I send in a script. They'll have a couple of notes sometimes. Sometimes like, where do you think of this stuff, Ryan? Which is always, I take it as a compliment.
Yeah.
It's more like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
And even if it's someone I've never worked with before, we're all professionals. We're all doing this in a cadence for a monthly book.
Yeah.
So everyone's bringing their best work. Everyone's got their A game. So it doesn't feel like it's ever a struggle. It's very smooth.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I was going to ask you if you're working on anything else. I think you kind of answered that. You can't say anything yet, but it sounds like there is
Yeah.
going to be some other Ryan North authored titles maybe coming from Marvel.
Yeah, maybe. Who can say what the future holds? I do have some non-Marvel stuff.
Oh, really?
Yes, I've been doing a Star Trek Lower Decks
Yes.
non-linear choose your own path comic,
Really?
and that's coming out the end of the year. It's the sort of thing that is probably the most like Ryan North project in the world. It's Star Trek. It's choose your own path. It's a comic. Like it just I couldn't say no to that idea.
Yeah.
So that is an interactive book where you play as Mariner and solve a mystery, and it's something I'm really proud of. It's very Star Trek. It's also I've taken everything I've learned doing my other interactive prose books, the choose your own path versions of Shakespeare, to be or not to be, and Romeo and or Juliet, and put that into this interactive comic. So I'm really excited for it. I think it comes out in October. It's called Warp Your Own Way,
Yeah.
and if you're interested in Star Trek or choosing your own path through comic books, I think it's something that's really, really cool. I'm super proud of it. Um, but also, there is some more stuff coming that I can't talk about, but
Yeah.
you will discover soon enough.
Very good. Fair enough, Ryan. Fair enough. I know
Yeah.
how that goes. That's awesome. So this is your second time back to Star Trek or third time? Because you've done some Star Trek before, I think, right?
Yes, we did a mini series for Lower Decks, which
Mhm.
was 3 issues. That's at IDW. And then this graphic novel, which is 200 and some odd pages. So second, oh no, third time, because then, sorry, yes, there was Shax's Best Day, which is nominated for an Eisner this year. How
Yes.
could I forget with Derek Charm? Thank you for that
Yeah,
leading question to make me remember that this is a thing they got prizes for. Yes,
that's pretty
Eisner
neat.
on nominated Star Trek comic, which is wild to think of, right? Like
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. You must anger a lot of other writers, man, because three
I
eyes
hope not.
nominated for another one. Yeah. I'd watch your back in San Diego if you're going to be down there, Ryan. You might have some other writers throwing things at you. That's amazing. I mean, congratulations. I mean, that's peak, right? That's when you know that you're doing things right.
Yeah, they're actually. I did a book with Eric Anderson last year called Danger and Other Unknown Risks, which is a YA adventure. Also up for an Eisner this year, best book for teens. And it and this is hard to say to make people believe it, and make it sound sincere, because it always sounds like a line. But it really is. I think the real honor is in being nominated, because that's the jury process. That's where people discuss the relative merits of books, and it's this whole thing. And the award is a vote. It's a popularity contest. So usually people say that like, oh, they're sore losers. They didn't win. That's why they're saying the honor is to be nominated. But I think it is. I think it's true. And I've won some, so I can say like it is. It's. I'm always so excited when the nominee list comes out, because there's so many deserving books, and not all of them get nominated, but those who do, you're like, yes, good for that person. Good for that person. It's nice to see recognition, because comics is generally a pretty lonely medium. It's collaborative, but you're in different countries, different states, different parts of the world, different time zones. And sometimes you put a book out and you just hope it finds an audience. And otherwise it's on its own. It disappears, it sinks or swims, and you can't really control it. You just hope for the best. So it's always nice to like have that recognition community.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely amazing. Can you kind of talk from a writer's perspective, from an advice standpoint for other people that want to get into storytelling within the comic medium? What is the approach that you take from a storytelling standpoint? Like, how does that start? And do you like chart out what you want to do before you write? Can you kind of let us into the brain of Ryan as how you approach?
Sure. The core thing is the fundamental unit of storytelling for me is the page.
Hmm.
The thing that makes comics unique, among the things that makes comics unique, is that you know exactly where on the page your words and your images are going to hit. In prose, you don't have that. You can write a beautiful sentence and then In some editions, you might have to turn the page in the middle of that. There'll be this horrible break that really steps in your sentence. In comics, you don't have that. So you can have a question at the end of the page that get answered on the top. You can have a punchline. You can have a reveal. As long as you're thinking of the page as this unit of storytelling, you can do these little mini cliffhangers that then carry you through the book. And people don't notice it. Readers don't notice it, but it makes the book feel like it has such an urgency and such a compelling way to carry you through it. Mm-hmm. So in my very first writing, I didn't outline things, just started writing and then would realize, oh, I'm out of story and there's 5 pages left. Or more often, I'm out of pages and there's 5 paragraphs of story left. So now what I do is I'll pitch a story, usually a page. Here's what's going to happen. Here's some twist. Here's the idea. And then my first step, which I don't enjoy doing, and I try to cheat and not do it, and it always bites me in the butt, so I have to go do it anyway, is outline it. So on this page, here's what happens. It's rough outlines just for me. I take my page of outline, just break it down, 1, 2, 3, or 5, all the way up to 20. And if I'm really good, I'll only outline it out to page 19, because I still, after 10 years longer doing this, I don't have a perfect instinct of how long things will take. So I'll say, oh yeah, this will be 1 page. And I find out, actually, I need 3 pages for that conversation to really make it hit. This is taking more time than I thought. Yeah. So giving yourself a bit of buffer, breaking it down page by page, writing those pages, making sure every page sings on its own, feels like its own complete unit of story. And then your full issue, that should also be a complete unit of story. You don't want someone to buy an issue, because comics, we all know, is a not inexpensive hobby. You don't want to spend $3, $4, $5 on a comic and feel like that's it, nothing happened. Like, you need to have a set story. So if that's 4, they're generally standalone. That helps. With Squirrel Girl, every issue has to move the story forward, feel like you've progressed something. Tom is always talking recently about, he wants every issue that Marvel sells. So if someone picks up that book and they read it and someone says, what happened? They can answer. Like, this is the thing that changed. This is what happened in this book. So it feels like you're getting something. It's not just part 3 of 7 is a hard sell.
Yeah. No, that's really good advice. And then as far as what you give to your artists, what does that look like? Is that the finished, like when you're done with that process, then you hand the finished product over to the artist and let them do it? Or are you giving them page at a time so they can start right away?
Oh, I always try to get it finished. Page at a time. I've never done it. It feels to me like something has gone wrong if that's happening, because once you do it, everything's locked in cement. If the artist has drawn page 1, there's no way I can change that. It's not fair to anyone, which means my story now has to work. I imagine it's like laying down something and it's just hardening behind you and it's locked. So I always send them a full script. And I say, like, this is not a recipe. This is a script. And I am not the oracle of truth here. Change whatever you want. You have a better idea, go for it. Like, don't feel like you have to draw exactly what's here, but here is a version that I see of this that works. And sometimes when I've got a great rapport with the artist, I will then do things like, I've done this like maybe 3 times in my career, where I say, okay, we're going to have a fight scene on this page and it has to end with this. You can do anything you want in the middle, which artists always say, like, we love that. This is a fun treat. Thank you. And it always feels to me like I'm not doing my job because I didn't really write that page. I wrote the last panel of that page and left it for the artist to go nuts with. So it's a rare thing I do, but generally it's just a full script. Here's what happens. Please enjoy, do whatever you want.
Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah. I wonder, like, because you've had pretty much the same artist, I think, throughout, right?
Fantastic Four, we've got a couple. We had Ivan Coelho up to the first
Gomez is up there.
12, and then Gomez, and some others here or there filling in for different issues, which has been great.
Yeah, that's awesome, man, to be able to work with so many amazing artists. And then working with Alex Ross. And so how does that work from a writer's perspective? Are you setting Alex the script and then he's creating a cover that's based on that script? A lot of them are kind of just like this, which is absolutely incredible. Some of my
there's those pinups. Yeah, so the way it works is I will send 2 or usually 3 suggestions to Alex via Tom, where he will, if I send some bad ones, I guess he'll take them out. But generally, I haven't heard about that happening. And I won't send him the full issue. I'll be like, well, here's what's happening. Here's some images I think might be striking. And usually there's something I've chosen. Sometimes he'll go in a different direction. The funny one is issue 5 has the Fantastic Four being rotated through 4-dimensional physical space. And so I was like, well, what you need for this cover, Alex, is I want to see the Fantastic Four being rotated through four-dimensional space,
Mm.
which is an impossible thing to imagine, and it's an impossible thing to draw. And so he sent back some sketches, and he was like, "I'm sorry, like, am I doing it right? I'm not sure if any of these work." And I was like, "Alex, I asked you to draw three-dimensional characters being translated through four-dimensional space in a two-dimensional medium. These are great. I asked you literally for the impossible, and you have somehow managed it." So it's, I mean, as a comic writer, a lot of it is routine. It's awesome, but it's like, yeah, this is the job. I draw it and I write it and stuff gets drawn, and this is how the process works. But it's still always special when I see a cover that Alex Ross has drawn for this issue. Issue 10, I wanted the Fantastic Four to be off model and monstrous, like they were the bad guys, make them look creepy and scary. And he incredibly nailed it. And I had never thought in my life there would come a point where I would be suggesting to Alex Ross what to paint this month.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Now, from a writer's perspective, Ryan, how do you keep things fun? Because like you said, it is kind of a lonely position. You're sitting in your room, you're writing out scripts. Like, how do you keep things really interesting and fun so it doesn't feel mundane, doesn't feel like you're doing the same thing every single day?
Are you asking for me or for the readers?
For you, like as a writer,
Oh,
like how do you keep things fresh for you as a writer? Because I could imagine just sitting in a room constantly writing. You probably need a break from that, I would think. Just like an artist probably needs to put the pencil down for a little bit and do something that rejuvenates them.
yeah. A lot of it is just discovering what works for you. I learned very early on that I do my best work in the morning around 3 or 4 o'clock. It's a lot harder to write. Feels like pulling teeth. Some people get up at 5 o'clock to start writing, five in the evening and
Yeah.
start. They're almost night owls. It blows my mind. I cannot do that. So I try to organize my day such that I've got time in the morning to write. And it's never hard to keep it interesting because you're writing stuff that you think is cool. Like if you're bored writing it, people will be bored reading it. So I'm always trying to think of stuff that interests me. There's been a couple times where I've taken jobs for stuff I was less interested in, and then it did become work, and it was really hard. And it really, taught me the lesson of you need to care about what you're writing. That's the first thing I do now. Like when I was asked to pitch for Fantastic Four, my first thought was, oh wow, what could Reed Richards do? It wasn't, oh wow, what could Reed Richards do, or what could Sue Storm do, or anything like that. It was, okay, what do I care about these characters? Like what excites me about them? I have to go read a bunch of Fantastic Four comics and find my way in because until I care about the characters, there's no way to possibly pitch or even write a comic. And that's the same with Squirrel. It's that same process where I was asked to pitch on Squirrel Girl, and I went and read all the Squirrel Girl comics and got really excited about her and the possibilities. So it's finding something of yourself reflected there. It's finding some way to tell stories about these people. But if you can't find that door, if you can't be excited, you can't write it. And I've had that too. I've been asked to pitch on things, and I've read a bunch of comics, and I had to write back and like, I can't. I don't have a pitch for this character, and this is crazy because that's the job. But I'd much rather be honest and say I don't have a good pitch for you than try to cobble together a couple bad pitches. And best case scenario, they get approved. Now I have to write a book I don't like. Like no.
Yeah. Now, as you look at either Marvel, even DC, or any other universe, is there a character or a title that you would like to work on in the future because you have read those and you really love that character and you want to have your opportunity at some point?
Yeah, generally, usually I'd be like, oh no, I don't have a lot of things on the list because part of the job is if someone says, hey, I've got a book, give a pitch for it, then you get interested, then you get excited because the danger of carrying around a pitch in your back pocket is that pitch is an amber. And if you have a Batman pitch that would work great after Nightfall in 97, it's not going to work anymore. But
Good
that's where
point.
your heart is stuck to this. Um, that said, for a while, I'd be like, man, I bet you I would love to write an Iron Man comic. I'd love to write Iron Man. And I've been working on the Iron Man game at Motive.
Oh,
Um, so it's totally scratched that itch. So every day I'm talking about Iron Man stuff, and it's a very different medium, very different form, but also it feels like you're getting in your Tony time. So I would now not want to write an Iron Man comic because I'm putting all my best ideas into this game. Um, but that's about as close as I get to an answer for that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think Iron Man would be pretty awesome. Now, from a genre standpoint, where is your sweet spot for genre, right? So, I mean, Fantastic Four is obviously action, sci-fi. But do you have like, is there a genre that you would like to touch? Like maybe something more serious, maybe something,
Yeah, I always wanted to do a horror
yeah,
book, and then I did a one shot Dark Iron Man,
yeah.
Dark horror book, where it was this great body horror comic, and that was so much fun. I wrote that comic twice because it was initially was going to be, I think, 3 pages, and then pandemic happened and everything got screwed up.
Yeah.
And at the end, it was shorter, and so I ended up cutting 10 pages from the book,
Oh, wow.
which meant basically when you're cutting a story by a third, that means a rewrite.
Yeah.
But every time in my life where I've had to do that, the other time was in high school, where I've rewritten something from scratch. The final result is always so much better because this is you're going over it again, you're making new choices, you've already seen one way it can work. And it was really gratifying to see when that book came out. This is before Fantastic Four, this is after Squirrel Girl. And people are like, sorry, this is the Squirrel Girl guy writing this horrifying book. This guy has some range. And I was like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I was shooting for.
Yeah, yeah. That would be very cool, man. Very cool.
Yeah, but it's also like Fantastic Four is so flexible. Like we did recently a noir issue,
Mhm.
which you
Yep.
can do with Fantastic Four.
That was
Just drop it
19, right?
in. 19, yeah, with
Yeah.
Alicia as
And the
detective.
artwork is just insane in that.
So good.
Grayscale. Oh my gosh. I was like, wow, this is amazing. I can almost
Yeah.
like I don't get me wrong, I love the color, but I can almost use a little bit more grayscale in some Fantastic Four after seeing that because then you had the red accent on the dress and it was just
Yeah.
beautiful. It just popped.
Pops.
Incredible.
So
Yeah.
good. Yeah, no, it's there's been a couple times I've seen people be like, oh, Ryan is doing these one shots and each of them they could be longer stories, just burning through these ideas. And I'm like, oh, I want to get to the just do all the cool stuff and don't worry about it. But with that, I was like, man, we could have like if someone said, Ryan, do you want to write a noir Fantastic Four miniseries? I would be like, well, maybe because it's so fun. And having Alicia as a detective, I
Yeah.
read a lot of early when Sherlock Holmes first appeared. A lot of people were like, oh, detectives, we're gonna do detective stories now. And there were a couple that involved blind detectives, and I could look to read those old stories and see how they use their detective techniques
And
to solve crimes when they can't see.
yeah. No, that's awesome. That came out so beautiful. The story was awesome, and the artwork. I mean, I had to go through it a couple times.
Gorgeous.
Artwork was just gorgeous, incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I was the coloring when there's a panel, I guess spoilers for the book.
Yeah.
There's a panel where it's a splash of a building on fire.
Uh,
And after seeing so much grayscale in that book,
yeah.
when you get to that page, you turn the page and it's just this flash of yellow. It almost felt glowing in a sense I've never really experienced it with print media, where it felt like there was a light to it because you're so used to gray with like a couple flashes of pop, then you have just a inferno on one page. It
You
really,
almost wanted to go like this to put the fire out.
yeah,
So real,
yeah,
right?
so effective.
Yeah.
So impressed by the work there.
Incredible. Yeah, no, it's incredible. Now, Ryan, as far as like how fans can meet you, do you have a calendar of like Comic Cons that you will be at throughout the year? You planning to go to like San Diego Comic Con or New York Comic Con?
Yeah, actually, there's a Google Calendar on my personal website, ryannorth.ca, that I put all my public appearances on, but there's not a ton this year. I'm not sure why. I've been sort of waiting for someone to take me to the ball, and it hasn't happened yet. I will be at San Diego briefly, just walk around as a regular person. I can
Oh,
say hi to people if they happen to spot me, or might, if I'm feeling ambitious, like try to be at a certain place at a certain time. But it's so hard in San Diego. It's so packed. It's so
so
everything.
Marvel will have a booth
Um,
there, right? You won't have a time at their booth at least?
I should drop them a line and see if I can set that up.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, last year they had a pretty big booth, and then once in a while they'll have a creator there or an artist signing for people. But that would be amazing to be able to meet you at the Marvel booth. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Thank you for that suggestion. That's something I should look into.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. I will see if I can make that happen.
Like when you look at like the Marvel titles, right? Obviously, Spider-Man is always going to be at the top, right? That's been a number one selling title for many, many years. But then you have
Mhm.
Iron Man, you have Wolverine, which is a top. Fantastic Four is as important as any other title within the
Yeah.
Marvel universe, right? You should definitely be at the Marvel booth. It's literally such a crucial title within the Marvel universe, right? You remove Fantastic Four, a lot of things fall apart over the 90 years that this has been going on, right? So it's a
Oh yeah,
crucial.
the whole universe never gets started. Like they're
Yeah,
there beginning of
such
Marvel Universe is FF number one.
Yeah, no, it's so crucial. And one of the greatest villains ever with Doctor Doom, and there's just
Love
so
him.
much that goes into Fantastic Four. Like you are literally, like if you're at DC, right, your dream is to get on Action Comics or get on Detective Comics or Superman or Batman because those are the two main titles. And at Marvel, I would have to think it's Fantastic Four and maybe Spider-Man, obviously. So you're kind of right in my eyes, one of the most important books at Marvel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not to add
Yeah.
any pressure or make you feel like, oh shit.
No pressure. Yeah. But it's, I mean, it's the one thing I disagree with a little on that
Yeah.
is for me, my opinion changed a lot. Just the experience of writing different characters where initially like, yeah, I want to write, Batman, Superman, Spider-Man. And not that you don't want to write them, but ideally, I think mandatorily, when you're writing a character, they have to be the coolest character. I think Doreen Green's Squirrel is amazing. I'm so pleased and oddly proud of her. I think she's great. And writing Fantastic Four the same way, I feel the same way with these characters. Like, oh, these are great characters. These are no pun intended, fantastic characters. Um, I don't think it's. I think I think that's universal. I can't imagine. I hope no one writing, a non Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, whatever Avengers character is thinking, oh, once I gotta spend my time in the trenches writing this character, and then I can finally write Spider-Man because that's not
Right.
what a horrible way to live your life.
No, for sure. Yeah. No, I mean every character you write has to be the greatest thing ever, right? That way it comes
Yeah.
across to the fan. But yeah, no, that's a really good point, Ryan. Very good point. Yeah. So I mean, but you will be at San Diego. Is the plan to be there like one day or?
Yeah, yeah. I sort of throwing this plan together at the last minute, so nothing solid yet. I'll put it in my calendar as soon as something is.
Yeah.
Um, if you, I'll be in Newfoundland
Oh, okay.
next weekend, which is my first time in that province. I'm a fair ways away from San Diego for
Yeah.
sure.
You're on the other side of the country.
Yeah, I'll be at the Downtown Comics Book Club at Too Slow on Duckworth Street on June 8th.
Yeah.
And then Scene Missing, San Diego.
Were you at Calgary? What was it, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago?
No, I wasn't, unfortunately, not this year.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. Because you're in the Toronto area, or are you the GTA? Are you in that area over?
Yep,
Yeah,
yep. I was at TCAF, well, as a person walking around at TCAF last year,
yeah,
or 2 weeks ago, three
yeah.
weeks ago. Great show, great show. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, very cool, man. Well, Ryan, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you spending some time with me, man. I'm a big fan of your work. Congratulations on your
thank you.
success. Good luck at the Eisners. That's
Appreciate it.
pretty amazing. I don't know where you're gonna put all these Eisners and Harvey Awards, but that's
I'll
pretty
just you need to get a shelf, an accolade shelf.
an accolade shelf. Yeah. Well, I mean, congratulations, though. Big fan. I'm hoping that maybe once you're able to reveal some of the other stuff that you're doing, I would love to have you come back on if that's okay and talk
Yeah, of
through
course.
it. That would be amazing. But
Yeah,
I really
we
appreciate
should
it.
have lots to talk about.
Yeah, I hope so. That'd be really fun, man. Because Marvel's got a lot going on right now. I mean, Blood Hunt, and there's just a lot going on right now. So I can't wait to for you to reveal what you're working on. If it's at Marvel, like we don't know, right? So
Well, I guess I could say I'll exclusively reveal right now that there is something exciting happening at Marvel in the
okay,
future.
excellent. That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Yeah, because you should be writing more than just one title for Marvel. I don't know if you could handle more than one title, but I think you should be.
There's only so many hours, but yeah, it
Yeah.
is. I mean, initially, so I did think it was hard the first time I did it when I was writing Squirrel Girl and Jughead at Archie. And
Oh,
I was like, this
Jughead,
is
yeah.
really cool.
Another award, Harvey Award, right?
Uh, Eisner?
Oh, Eisner, you're right. It was Eisner, not Harvey. Yeah.
Who's keeping? I
Keep
hate.
it I have it written down right in front of me. I just went off the top of my head, which is always a mistake.
Yeah. Um, so initially, I found that very tricky to sort of balance those two things. I've since gotten better at it. I think sort of setting aside one. This morning will be character A. This afternoon will be character B. Instead of trying to do them both at sort of every hour or so, I couldn't do it. I learned that when I was doing Slaughterhouse-Five, where I couldn't go from doing Slaughterhouse-Five to Squirrel Girl back to back. The tones didn't really mesh.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I
stop
wouldn't
doing
think
that.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you, Ryan. I want to be very respectful of your time. I want to thank you for entrusting me with your story. I
No,
really
of course.
appreciate it. And yeah, I got my stack here, just waiting for issue 21 to come out, and we'll be in
Oh, that's nice.
good. But thank you so much. I don't know if there was anything else that we left out or.
No, this has been great. I will say issue 21 comes out this month.
Yeah, it comes out, I
In
think
June.
June, second week of June, is it?
Yeah, I think so. I'll double check. But I'm just now getting inked pages from Carlos Gomez on issue 25, and it's going to be such a good issue.
Really?
It's always, I mean, I say that about all the issues, not always the most recent ones, one I'm most excited about, but you caught me at issue 25. Very excited for issue 25.
I'm writing 25 down. I can't wait to read that one.
Yeah.
And then one more thing, as far
Mhm.
as fans that want to follow you on social media, are you kind of on all social media, and is it just your name or?
Yeah, I'm on most active on Blue Sky, where I'm
Yeah, okay.
ryannorth.ca. I've got an Instagram account I kind of use that's Quantz, QWANTZ. And I have a Twitter account that I don't use anymore because Twitter has become a horrible place. That's
Yeah.
Ryan Q North.
Yeah.
But if you go, I mean, everything's on my website. If you go to ryannorth.ca, it's got links to social feeds and mailing list and calendar and anything you can want. List of all my books.
Yeah.
Very egotistical site awaits you at ryannorth.ca.
I love it, Ryan. I love it, man. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate your time, and I wish you have a great Friday and an amazing weekend.
You too. Thanks for having me. And let's do this again.
Let's do it again, my friend. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
All right,
Cheers.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.